You see the numbers, trillions in debt, every single country drowning in red ink, and you've asked the question, the one that keeps you up at night. If everyone is in debt, who actually has all the money? It feels like a global magic trick, a shell game where the P has completely vanished, and that knot in your stomach, that quiet fear that this whole system could collapse, that it could wipe out your savings, your security, your future. That feeling is your intuition screaming that something is deeply, deeply wrong. Politicians, pundits, the vague they use complex jargon, words designed to make your eyes glaze over. They do not want you asking the simple, dangerous question: who is the ultimate lender? Who holds the final IOU? The answer is not what you think. It's far more personal, and it connects directly to the money in your bank account. Let's find out who's really on the other side of that loan. So your mind goes to the usual suspects, doesn't it? China, oil-rich nations, a shadowy cabal of international bankers. It's a comforting thought, in a strange way, a clear villain, an external force we can point to and blame. It makes the problem feel solvable. But what if I told you that's exactly the narrative they are comfortable with you believing? Because the real truth is one that binds you directly into the system, and it's far more uncomfortable. Let's take the biggest boogeyman, China. It's true they hold a lot of U.S. debt, over $1 trillion, a number that sounds unimaginable. But here's the perspective shift that changes everything. That massive figure represents less than 5% of the total U.S. national debt. Japan holds a similar amount. The entire rest of the world, all other foreign governments combined, own less than a third. This is where the shell game gets exposed. If foreign powers aren't the primary creditors, then who is? Where is the other 70% of this multi-trillion-dollar debt hiding? The real money isn't coming from Beijing or Tokyo. It's coming from somewhere much, much closer to home. The trail doesn't lead across the ocean. It leads right back to your own doorstep and into the very heart of the government itself. The creditor you're looking for has been in the room this entire time. Let's pull back the curtain completely. The answer to who's the creditor isn't one single entity. It's a three-headed system, and understanding this is the key to seeing how the modern financial world truly operates. The first head, and the most shocking for most people, is the government itself. That's right. A massive portion of the so-called debt is simply one part of the government owing money to another. Think about the Social Security Trust Fund. For decades, the government collected more in payroll taxes than it paid out in benefits. But instead of leaving that money in a vault, it borrowed it, replacing the cash with special-issue treasury bonds, essentially IOUs it wrote to itself. It's a ledger entry, a promise from the left hand to pay the right hand. This is what's known as intra-governmental holdings, and it creates a terrifying future liability. When the time comes to cash in those IOUs to pay for your retirement, the government has only two choices: raise taxes dramatically or cut benefits. Your future security is the collateral for today's spending. Now, the second head of the creditor is where it gets personal. This is the public, but not in the way you think. This is a combination of the Federal Reserve, which can create money out of thin air to buy government bonds, and critically, you. Yes, you. If you have a pension, a 401k, a mutual fund, or even own a piece of a bond ETF, you are a creditor to your own government. Your retirement savings, the nest egg you're diligently building, is being loaned to the state to fund its current operations. You are hoping the entity you're lending to doesn't devalue the currency in which you'll be repaid. This is a fundamental conflict of interest. You are both the citizen and the banker. And this leads us to the third most abstract head of the creditor, future you. The entire system is predicated on the belief that future economic growth will be strong enough to service this debt. The government is borrowing from the prosperity of tomorrow to pay for the spending of today. You, the future taxpayer, the future retiree, are the ultimate backstop. You are the one on the hook for higher taxes, for inflation that erodes your savings, or for potential austerity. So when you ask, who is the creditor? The unsettling answer is, it's a tangled web of the government's own accounting, your own retirement funds, and a massive bet on your own future productivity. This isn't a loan from a foreign power, it's a circular, self-reinforcing system where we are all both the borrower and, in some way, the lender, trapped in a financial feedback loop. Now that you know who the creditors are, you have to ask the next, more terrifying question. How does this machine not just run but accelerate? How can the debt climb higher and higher, seemingly forever, without the entire system seizing up? The answer lies in a deceptively simple, self-perpetuating cycle that depends on one thing above all else: confidence. Here's how the engine works. The government needs to spend more than it takes in, so it issues treasury bonds, those IOUs we talked about. It holds an auction. Your pension fund, the Federal Reserve, and foreign central banks all place their bids. Now here's the critical mind-bending part. When an old bond matures and the government has to pay it back, it doesn't use tax revenue. No, it does something far simpler and more insidious. It sells new bonds to get the cash to pay off the old ones. It's robbing Peter to pay Paul, where Peter and Paul are just future versions of each other. This is the debt rollover, and it's the heartbeat of the modern state. And politically, it's always easier to sell a new bond than it is to make the brutal choice of raising taxes or cutting spending to pay off an old one. So the cycle continues, but there's a cost. Every single one of those bonds carries an interest rate. So not only is the government constantly taking out new loans to pay off old ones, but the total amount it owes, the principal, keeps growing, and the interest payments on that ever larger mountain of debt are exploding. This is where the cycle gets truly vicious. As interest payments consume a larger share of the budget, the government might have to borrow even more just to cover the interest. It's a financial treadmill set to an ever-increasing speed. The only way to keep from being thrown off is to ensure that there is always a buyer for the next round of bonds. This is the confidence game. If at any point the creditors, you, your pension fund, the world, lose faith and stop buying, the entire mechanism grinds to a catastrophic halt. The government would be forced to either print money uncontrollably, causing hyperinflation that wipes out your savings, or default outright, triggering a global depression that vaporizes your investments. So the system must continue. It's a perpetual motion machine built not on physics but on a single fragile thing, the belief that it can never, ever stop. And your financial future depends entirely on that belief holding. So, how does this abstract trillion-dollar merry-go-round of government IOUs and bond auctions actually reach into your pocket and steal your financial security? It does it in three silent, brutal ways, and you're feeling the effects right now. The first and most insidious is inflation. When the debt gets too large and the traditional pool of buyers dries up, the government has a lender of last resort: the central bank. Through processes like quantitative easing, they create new money to buy bonds, flooding the system with cash. This doesn't create more goods and services. It just makes each dollar in your wallet, each dollar of your salary, worth less. That feeling at the grocery store, the shock at the price of a used car, the sting of your energy bill, that's the national debt making your life more expensive. The second way is through the threat of future taxes. Remember that financial treadmill? It can't run on magic. Those exploding interest payments we talked about, now totaling hundreds of billions of dollars a year, have to be paid from somewhere. The most direct solution: higher taxes. Every dollar you send to the IRS to service the interest on the debt is a dollar not going into your child's college fund, your retirement account, or your family vacation. Your future prosperity is being siphoned off to pay for the past. And the third way is through interest rates. To attract the massive volume of buyers it needs for all that new debt, the government is often forced to offer higher yields. This in turn pushes up interest rates across the entire economy. Your mortgage becomes more expensive, your car loan costs more. The credit card debt you carry becomes a heavier burden. The national debt is no longer a number on a screen. It's the reason you can't afford the house you want, the reason you're living paycheck to paycheck, and the quiet anxiety that your hard-earned money is slowly melting away. So, do they not want you to know who the real creditor is? Absolutely. A confused public is a compliant one. The myth of the foreign creditor is a convenient smokescreen. It's far easier to point a finger at a distant nation than for a politician to explain that your retirement fund is fueling a system that threatens to devalue it, or to admit that your future taxes are nothing more than an interest payment on yesterday's spending. The real secret they're keeping isn't the name of the creditor, it's the fact that you are both the victim and a vital cog in the machine. You are the ultimate guarantor. By making the system seem too complex to understand, they ensure you never ask the most dangerous question of all. What happens if we, the real creditors, finally decide to stop believing in the magic?